What do you call it when a bride caresses her ex during the first dance and tells her husband to stop being dramatic? How does a quiet man turn humiliation into lawful action, gathering receipts, protecting his child, and letting a public service of divorce papers end the performance? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Lucian Quist, and I learned to breathe through moments that try to turn into a show. I plan transit timetables for work, so small delays and small details matter to me. On our wedding night, Elena touched her ex during the first dance and called it playful. The room laughed. I kept my hands at my sides and counted the lights above the floor. Later, people said I should relax and live in the modern day. I said nothing. At home, 2 mugs now dry on opposite ends of the sink like quiet markers. A thin binder labeled utilities sits straighter than bills should make it. A clipboard on the desk only says statement. A drawer learns to lock when my steps come near. On the wall planner, a red circle waits without words. My phone shows a dot on Thursdays that reads meeting, personal, and a small reminder whispering downtown 11:20 a.m. with no address. A spreadsheet opens and closes when footsteps pass. A printer sometimes breathes out one blank page, warm and harmless. Our daughter Ira asks if wedding dances can break promises. I tell her promises are not costumes. I will handle this properly and let paper speak when it must. I woke before the light and let the house tell me what kind of day it wanted. The kettle hummed, the fridge ticked, and a far board in the hall settled like an old man in a chair. I lined the spoon with the saucer and made the small things straight, because straight things slow the head. 2 mugs dried on opposite ends of the sink. They faced away like neighbors who forgot how to wave. Outside, the street was a gray sheet without letters. I breathed in 4s and tried not to name every sound. I planned timetables for a living. 1 minute can bend a whole route. 1 joke can bend a life. I poured water and watched the steam form and vanish. Vanish is a good word for a thing that once felt huge and then was gone, except the laugh from the dance had not vanished. It lived under the skin like a small grain of sand. Elena came in with her phone as a second face. She checked herself, then me, then the place where a camera would be if one were here. She said she had messages from the wedding that were funny. She said people loved brave moments and modern warmth. She said I should not turn a dance into law. I said I made tea and asked if she wanted some. She said she did not like the brand I bought and asked if I would stop picking cheap tea. I said I would look for the old box in the back. She said I was too serious about small things. I said small things are how the big things show their faces. She left the glass by the sink and went back to the hall. A door eased shut as if it did not want to be noticed. Our daughter, Ira, slid in wearing socks with stars. She touched the counter with her palm like she was testing if today was safe. She asked if gentle voices could earn a star before school. I said yes if we use them when it is hard. She asked if the first dance is a promise too. I said the first dance is a promise in front of people, and it should keep its hands kind. She said she heard someone say the touch was only a joke. She asked if jokes can be promises that break on purpose. I said jokes can be costumes for heavy choices. She drew a small square in the air with her finger and then set her finger down as if to close a file. I put her lunch in the bag. She said she wanted apples, not grapes, and I switched them because small switches keep trust in shape. We walked to school and counted the cracks by the bakery. She asked if I would be on time for pickup. I said yes, and said the time out loud like it was a bus number. She liked that. She said time is a friend when it comes when you call. I kissed her head, then kept my hand up so she could slap it. She asked if I would draw a star next to my name for on time. I said I would draw it with my feet instead. She laughed and ran to the gate. The kitchen felt bigger without voices. I rinsed the mugs and set them to dry on opposite ends again. I ran a cloth under the lip of the counter because crumbs collect there if you do not watch. I walked up the stairs with the laundry basket and put my weight on the side of each step to keep the wood quiet. The bedroom door was open by 2 fingers. I heard a soft call in the hallway stop when I stood at the landing. The desk drawer slid the last inch and clicked like a thought that had made up its mind. I did not touch it. In the guest room, the bedspread was smooth, but the top sheet was turned down by one careful thumb. The clipboard on the desk said statement in a clean font and nothing else. On the shelf, the thin binder labeled utilities sat too straight and too heavy for simple bills. I did not open it. Under a taxes folder, a short strip of tape held a small USB like a trapped insect that had decided to sleep. I went down to the driveway and tied a bag. A car slowed by the curb, then floated away. Mrs. Hlushko watered plants that were already wet. She said morning water tells leaf veins to wake. I said morning helps people do the same. She looked down the street and said nights carry secrets, but mornings stamp them. I said mornings stamp routes so buses do not get lost. She laughed and kept the hose near the soil. We did not look at each other, which in our street means we are not blind to each other. Inside, I checked the wall planner. A red circle sat at the end of a week like a marble on a flat table. A small sticky under the month read Bring Forms. I did not remember when I wrote it. The handwriting was mine. I opened my phone and added a silent block that said downtown 11:20 a.m. I did not add an address. I set a repeating dot on Thursdays called Meeting, Personal. I set the phone face down and let it be the light for someone else's pocket. I opened my laptop and a spreadsheet weighted with initials and dates. It looked like a bad poem to anyone else. To me, it was a map of small roads leading to a real town. Footsteps passed the doorway. I minimized the sheet and opened a help article about scanner pairing. The footsteps faded. I returned to the sheet and saved. A small square in the corner said file uploaded successfully. That sentence is a type I trust. It does not beg for likes. It does not pretend to be a hero. It simply reports. By evening, the house smelled like bread and a thin line of perfume that did not belong to today. I set 2 mugs to dry at the edges again. I put a plain page under my palm to test the printer heat. It was warm and empty. Blank is not nothing. Blank is a plate. I slid the page into a folder with no label. I stood at the wall planner and set a phone alarm labeled Paper Drop for 8:20 a.m. tomorrow. It was a promise to myself, not a signal to anyone else. Upstairs, a door latch clicked. The sound went down the hall and settled in the drywall. The night had 4 sounds: the heater's first word, the fridge's second thought, a whisper that quit halfway, and the memory of a shredder deciding to be quiet. I breathed in 4s. The dark closed its eyes and the day ended. I reached the office before the jokes did. Monitors glowed like small moons. The ticket queue was a neat line of closed doors, password reset, label printer stall, and handheld pairing. I opened each door and then closed it again, so work behaves if you hold it in 2 hands. A banner tried to slide onto my screen with my last name and a pillow emoji. I closed it with the same keystroke I used to kill a loop. Calm is not public. Calm is a tool. By 9, the open plan hum learned its shape. Someone laughed, and the laugh checked the air and repeated to become true. A coworker leaned on my partition and asked if I saw Lida's post from the wedding where Elena touched Max as a joke, and everybody loved that we were modern. He said I should relax and enjoy that no one was mad. I said I had tickets to close. He said I was calm for a man who was a character in a story he did not choose. I said calm packs light and fits in any meeting. He laughed and said he would steal that line and then went back to his desk. Irina walked over and asked for a quick word. In the small HR nook, the air smelled like coffee that had already told its story. She said there were mentions with my name, and she wanted to check on my workload and mood. She said she could make small shifts if needed. I said my outputs were on time and steady. I said I would ask if a change was needed. She said she appreciated that, and that I could use the room if I needed quiet. We smiled like people who know work is a good kind of silence. At my station, I slid a small sticky under the monitor that said, Bring Forms. It rested there like a tiny brick in a wall. I opened the spreadsheet and added a row with 3 initials and a time. Footsteps came and went. I minimized the sheet and pulled up a device page about drivers. The footsteps faded. I saved. The cloud square said file uploaded successfully. I took 1 breath and let it go. At lunch, I walked to the supermarket. 2 women near the fruit watched a phone clip of our first dance. The caption said playful touch cheating. They laughed and said the groom should loosen up. I picked apples and moved on. At the community board, a flyer about legal literacy hung a little crooked. I read the hour and place. I did not take a picture. I kept the details the way you keep bus numbers in your head when you have to change lines twice. In the pharmacy queue, the line bent around a shelf of shampoo. A teenager scrolled through tagged photos from the wedding and stopped at the part where Elena stroked Max's jaw and then laughed into his shoulder. The words under it said closure. Another said brave. Another said no crime here. My phone lit with a private call and then went dark when I did not answer. A ceiling speaker played a soft song about freedom. Freedom is not a hand that can go anywhere it wants. Freedom has rails where promises live. I bought batteries and left. Back at the office, Irina sent a calendar hold for a device audit. I accepted and wrote 1 line about counts. On my phone, I tapped the repeating dot labeled Meeting, Personal, and let it sit. I added downtown 11:20 a.m. to next week's grid. I did not put an address. I put the phone face down and worked. After work, I cut through a co-working lobby that smelled like cold coffee and beginner ambition. Behind glass, I saw Max telling a small group that jokes make healing and that some men cannot breathe when women are free. He spread his hands like a showman. People nodded, because nodding lets you leave without fighting. The guard watched faces with a careful stillness. I kept walking and did not look back. The metro rocked me like a big animal with a slow heart. A poster about flu shots repeated itself 3 times. I read it until the words became shapes and then numbers. Across the aisle, a man watched a replay of the dance and laughed without sound. I counted stops. Counting is a rope you can hold even if the floor moves. At home, I set 3 binders on the table and dusted them with 1 pass. Home, auto, bank. They stood like strong cups. I put the thin binder labeled utilities next to them. It was too heavy for what it said it was. I left it closed. I opened my laptop and cleaned the desktop until 2 folders were left. Archive A. Archive B. They faced the same way like hands ready to help. I wrote today's date on a small USB and put it in the dish with the spare key and a paperclip. Tools waited without talking. Ira came in with her chart. She pointed at the box called Gentle Voices and asked if she earned a star for how she asked a hard question at lunch. I said yes and drew the star with a pen that did not blot. She asked if promises can heal. I said sometimes they heal and sometimes the repair is a new path. She nodded and asked if I would be on time tomorrow. I said the number out loud and she smiled. On Time is a song she knows. Elena passed the doorway and said weekends should be light. She said I make rooms heavy with my planning face. She said modern couples do not fear skin and contact. I said our child needs rooms that do not use jokes to cut. She said I was turning life into a courtroom. I said I was making tea. She sent a message into the air and left a small wind behind. When the house softened, I put on headphones and made a short call with a voice that does not wake children. I talked about a window and a place that was public and neutral. I used simple words that fit on 1 line each. I ended the call with a thank you. The printer woke and slid a single blank page from a test I had sent. I held it until it cooled. Blank can carry truth later when truth is ready to be carried. I slid it into a plain folder and closed a drawer that did not lock. I stood by the wall planner and looked at the red circle. I set a reminder for paper drop at 8:20 a.m. and let it sit. I turned out the light. In the hall, a step paused outside the door and then moved on. The house sighed into sleep. I lay in the dark and counted 4 breaths at a time. 4 is a calm number. The night ended. The rooftop hung over the street like a lit shelf. I went because the invite said community and healing and modern vows. The evening air moved perfume away and let the city breathe. I stood near the rail where the hum of traffic could break up voices before they hardened. The elevator opened and gave the room faces that already knew which way to look when the lens rose. Phones floated like small moons. A laugh started near the bar, checked if it had an audience, and repeated until it became the truth for that corner. Elena came in with a brightness that did not need lamps. Max followed with a walk that asked the room to confirm he was welcome. Lita waved her phone and told the circle that tonight was about brave laughter and adult trust. I kept my hands in my pockets and counted the lights along the roofline. Counting is a rope. You can hold it while other people invite you into a performance. Someone asked if I was ready to laugh about the dance. I said I was here to stand and listen and leave without causing work for the staff. The person smiled like I had told a joke by accident. Music slid under the talk. The beat told feet to be generous with rhythm. Lita said it was time to show how closure looks when adults are brave. She called Max into the circle and then motioned to Elena the way a host brings a guest back onto a stage. Elena said it was only a dance and a joke and a friendly hand. She touched Max on the chest in the same place she had touched him at the wedding. The circle cheered because cheering is easier than thinking. Someone chanted just a dance, and the chant grew like a small engine that found fuel. A man near me asked if this proved we were past old rules. He asked if I felt freer now that I had seen bravery up close. I said I was drinking water and wanted to keep it inside the glass. He laughed like I had confused myself and moved away to catch a better angle. The security guard near the elevator watched the room without moving his head. He had the patience of a person who knows that doors and people behave the same way when guided. Open, close, open, close. I stepped to the edge and put on my headphones. The wind took the warmth out of my ears. I made a short call in a voice that would not wake a child in the next room. I confirmed a time window that was respectful and a public place that was neutral. I used words that fit on a single line each. I thanked the voice and ended the call. I did not announce what I had done. The call was not a scene, it was a line on a quiet map. When I returned, Max had the circle arranged like a half moon. He asked Elena to show trust with her hands. She traced the air as if drawing a door no one could close. Lida narrated for a lens that wanted a simple story. She said the old way was fear and the new way was touch without ownership. People nodded, because nodding lets you stay in a group without raising your own questions. A stranger told me to take notes on the future. I said the future rides buses that still come on time. He did not understand, and that was fine. I went to the bar and asked for water. Water respects the person who carries it. A woman nearby said she loved how Elena had made the wedding light instead of heavy, and how I had been a good sport. She said not many men could be that modern. I said gentleness for a child is older than any trend. She smiled the way people smile when a sentence does not fit their feed. The elevator opened again. New faces stepped out, ready to hear the lines that had already been tested. Lita lifted her phone and framed the crowd. She pointed at me and asked the circle to tag me, because a story needs two sides to feel fair even when only one side adds clicks. I looked at the skyline and let my breath take the shape of fours. In my pocket, my phone lit. A text preview jumped up with my name and a line about the dance. I deleted it without opening because some boxes only hold noise. I moved toward the elevator. A couple entered with me. They rewatched the replay of the dance and wrote a caption that placed my last name next to a pillow emoji. They laughed at the space between what they said and what was true. The doors opened. The co-working lobby on the floor below had glass, plants, and a table where Mac sometimes held court. Tonight he was there again by chance or plan. He told a small group that honest bodies were stronger than frightened rules. He laughed when he spoke the word frightened. I passed along the glass. The guard behind the desk watched faces as if faces were clocks. Outside, the air did not care what anyone had said inside. It cooled every face with the same hand. The metro carried me through a tunnel that did not tell stories. People studied screens and let their faces be taught what to feel. A boy watched the rooftop clip and slid a slider to make the color deeper. The caption read just a dance, and then read brave, and then read no crime here. I counted stops. Each tone was a flat fact. Here, then here, then here. Counting is a way to keep promises to yourself in a room full of pretend. Home at last. The driveway was dark and clean. Mrs. Hlushko watered plants that were day-satisfied. She said night routes listen better. I said buses rest better when people do. She nodded toward the street without looking at me. The nod said she knew the air had been noisy elsewhere. In the kitchen, I set two mugs on opposite ends of the sink and turned them so the handles faced the room. The house smelled like dust and a memory of toner. I opened my laptop for a minute. A small cloud in the corner blinked and said file uploaded successfully. That sentence did its job without a crowd. I lay down and tried to sleep. The heater spoke once, the fridge a second time, and the hallway gave up on a whisper after half a word. I breathed in fours and let the dark close itself like a responsible book. The family restaurant used a long table like a straight road. We came for a birthday because families do not let rituals collapse even when the ground is uneven. I chose a seat at the near end so Ira could lean on me and still see the cake. Petro took the other side and asked her about stars. She unfolded a small chart from her book and showed gentle voices. On-time pickup, clean table, and a new square she had drawn. First dance, Morish, promise. He read the boxes like they were rules for a safe bridge. Elena arrived with Raisa and Lita and the kind of air that announces itself before the door closes. Raisa kissed Ira and then kissed the space by my cheek. She said families must be flexible in the modern day. I said families must be kind in any day. She said kindness and flexibility were the same if you looked from the right side. I did not debate angles at a table with juice boxes. Lita framed the table with her phone and said the feed needed a happy scene. She made a rectangle with her fingers that divided me and Elena into a split screen. The waiter asked for orders. I asked for tea because tea is a quiet anchor. The room buzzed with plates and forks and people who wanted to be on the same page without reading it first. We spoke about school and work and which fruit had lost the least money to the week. Then the subject arrived the way it always does when someone wants it to. Lita said her audience loved brave honesty and that adults could share space like travelers on a train. Elena nodded and said the dance was a joke that told the truth that we were free. She said control was an old habit that wore new shoes. Raisa folded her hands and smiled like a judge who already had the verdict in her other pocket. She said fear looks like care when it puts on a tie. Ira tugged my sleeve and asked if a joke can be a knife with paper around it. I said jokes can hide metal. She asked if houses can have rules like school. I said they can and should. She nodded and drew a small door in the margin of her chart. A door that closes softly is a rule that keeps people gentle. I sipped tea and let my hands warm. The cake arrived with candles. The lights dimmed, phones lit up because people do not remember how to let darkness exist without a lens. The song rose and made a circle. Ira closed her eyes to wish. The wish went somewhere only she knows. Flames died, lights returned. The waiter asked if anyone wanted coffee. I lifted my tea. Raisa stood and tapped a glass. She wanted to bless the couple and the brave choices that made a room honest. She said old rules choke the life out of love, and that control looks like protection until you read the small print. She did not say my name, but my name sat under her sentences the way a slow drum sits under a song. I kept my face plain. Petro coughed lightly and asked Ira to tell him what on-time pickup means. She said it means a promise that shows up when the clock says it should. He nodded and smiled at her instead of at the adults. Lita turned and whispered to Elena in a voice meant to be overheard. She said the audience adored the wedding clip and wanted a follow-up where everyone laughs together. Elena said I should relax because the room wanted light. I said nothing. Light that requires someone to swallow a stone is not light. Silence can be kind when words would set down a heavier thing. I excused myself and walked to the hallway near the restrooms. The fluorescent light had no filter. I turned on the tap and washed my hands longer than the sign asked. I lifted my phone and looked at the calendar. The red circle at the end of the week had not moved. It would never move by itself. I opened the silent block that read downtown 11:20 a.m. next week. I left it without address or notes. I closed the phone and put it away. Back at the table, Lita asked if my silence was a strategy. She said followers love a slow burn. Elena told her that my quiet turned life into paperwork. I let the lines float past. Ira asked if promises can heal after they are bent by a joke. I said sometimes a repair becomes a new road that does not cross the old one. She nodded and pressed her finger to the small door she had drawn, like she was checking the paint. We left early so Ira could sleep. The house met us with its ordinary face. In the bedroom, the top sheet on the big bed was turned down by a single thumb. The guest room pillow showed a crease that could have been an afternoon nap. On the desk, the thin binder labeled Utilities sat too straight and too heavy. On the wall planner, the red circle waited without words. A new blue dot had appeared 1 week before the red circle, small and quiet. I opened the message thread titled Follow Up and sent a single polite line. Thank you for your time. I put the phone face down so it would not hand me anyone else's mood. From the landing, I heard a shredder hum. It ran 3 counts, stopped, ran, stopped. The sound tried to decide between paper and strips. I did not open the door. I let the sound file itself under tonight's date in a corner of my head that does not leak. I walked downstairs and placed 3 binders in a neat row where they could be reached without calling a meeting: home, auto, bank. I dusted them with 1 pass. They were good tools standing by. They did not look for applause. In the kitchen, I wiped the counter until it squeaked. 2 mugs dried far apart, like landmarks that help lost people find the road. I wrote today's date on a small USB and put it with the key and the paperclip. I opened my laptop and made the desktop clean. Only 2 folders remained. Archive A, Archive B. They looked like 2 steady hands. I saved a small file and watched the cloud say File uploaded successfully. The message was square and modest and truer than a roomful of toasts. Ira came down in her socks to ask for water and to show me the new square on her chart. She had written beds are promises in letters that leaned right. She asked if rules can be heavy and still help you breathe. I said rules are like a roof. The roof is heavy, but the air under it is safe. She said that made sense and then yawned big enough to bend her face. I filled her cup. She drank and went back to bed like someone who trusts stairs to hold. Elena passed the doorway and said I must love turning off lights because it makes me feel important. She said I was rehearsing calm for an audience that did not exist. I said steady is kind and saves the electricity we pay for. She told someone on her phone that I measure life in coins. I made tea. The kettle sang like a small clear bell and stopped on time. The house quieted. I put on headphones and made 1 short call with the river voice. I confirmed that a neutral place had chairs and a clock and a person who could speak without making a speech. I thanked the voice and ended the call. The printer woke and slid a single blank page from a test job. I held it until the heat left and the page became only paper. Blank can keep secrets until truth needs a place to sit. I put the page in a plain folder and closed a drawer that did not lock. Before I slept, I stood by the wall planner. The red circle waited. I set a small alarm labeled paper drop for 8:20 a.m. and let it rest. I turned out the light and listened. Footsteps paused outside the door, then continued, then faded. The house laid itself down. Morning began with a square of pale light on the kitchen tile and the kettle sounding like a quiet train. I lined the spoon beside the saucer because order helps breath. 2 mugs dried on opposite ends of the sink with their handles turned out like hands that had stopped reaching. I checked the wall planner. The red circle held its color. A small blue dot sat 1 week before it. The sticky note under the month still read, "Bring forms" in my handwriting that looks calm even when I am not. I put my phone face down after adding a small block to Thursday called Meeting, Personal. The screen did not argue. It went dark and did its job. At work, the ticket queue formed a clean row. Password reset, handheld pairing, label printer stall. These are doors that open if you ask the right way. I opened them and let them close in the right order. A coworker leaned on the partition and asked if I had seen the wedding remix where Elena's touch was slowed and put to music that made the moment sound sweet. He said it proved the joke was harmless. I said I had tickets to close. He said I was unshakable for a man who is the villain in someone else's caption. I said steadiness packs light and fits in any room. He smiled because he needed a line to carry back to his desk. Irina stepped over and asked for a quick word in the small HR nook that smells like coffee and carpet. She said my name had appeared in tags, and she wanted to be sure workloads were fair and that I had what I needed. She said she could build space if I requested it. I said my outputs were on time and that I would ask if something changed. She nodded and said the room was open if quiet would help. I thanked her. Quiet rooms help. They are not miracles, but they are rails. Back at my station, I slid the sticky that says Bring forms a little farther under the monitor until the edge just showed. I opened my spreadsheet and added a line with 3 initials and a time. To someone else, it was nonsense. To me, it was a simple map. Footsteps passed behind me. I minimized the sheet and opened a device page about scanner batteries. When the footsteps faded, I saved. A small cloud in the corner said, File uploaded successfully. That sentence is honest because it does not try to be impressive. On first break, I stood by the loading dock in the thin cold. My phone lit with private and went dark when I did not answer. I opened the calendar and added one more quiet block called Downtown 1:15 p.m. No address, no notes. The forklift beeped a boundary as it rolled past. Machines that warn softly are my kind of machines. At lunch, I walked to the park and sat on a bench that faces a slide. I put on headphones and made a short call in a river voice that would not wake a sleeping child. I spoke about neutral places, respectful windows, and simple handoffs. I confirmed a plan in words that fit on an index card. I said thank you and ended the call. The wind moved leaves without asking who deserved it. I typed a one-line message to Elena. I said I would handle this properly. The sentence stood alone. It did not ask for a reply. The reply came anyway. It was a block about control and fragile men and how bodies are not crimes. I put the phone face down and watched a dog chase a cup until both gave up without deciding who had won. On the way back, I cut through the co-working lobby with its glass and ferns nobody waters on time. Max stood by the tall table with a coffee cup like a microphone. He told a small cluster that honest touch heals shame. He said frightened rules are cages. His hands smoothed the air like a man who sells beds on television. He did not see me or pretended not to see me. The guard at the desk watched faces like a person who reads a schedule. I kept walking. My feet knew where to go without a sign. In the pharmacy queue, I stared at a wall of vitamins that promise energy, calm, clarity, youth. None of the bottles promised steadiness. 2 places ahead, a screen replayed the dance and the rooftop echo. The caption said, just a dance and then brave and then no crime here. A person glanced from the screen to me and then to gum. My phone lit with a message from a contact saved as a single emoji. It said the clip jumped to a bigger account. It offered a link. I flicked it away and bought batteries because batteries solve actual problems. The metro carried me in soft metal. A poster about flu shots repeated. I read it until the letters turned to shapes, then numbers, then only space. Across from me, a teenager scrubbed through the wedding clip and added a sticker that made Elena's hand sparkle. The sparkle did not change what the hand did. I counted stops. Counting is a rope you can hold when the floor is a boat. Home, I placed 3 binders where any adult could reach them without a speech. Home, auto, bank. They stood like cups you hand to a thirsty person. I set the thin binder labeled utilities next to them. It was still too heavy for what it pretended to be. I left it closed. On the wall planner, the red circle was a quiet sun. I opened my laptop and tidied the desktop until only 2 folders remained. Archive A, Archive B. They faced forward like steady hands. I wrote today's date on a small USB and put it in the dish with the key and a paperclip. Tools wait without bragging. That is their power. Ira came in with her chart. She had added a square that said beds are promises and letters that lean to the right. She asked if I had been on time at pickup today. I said I spoke the time out loud and showed up when the clock agreed. She said she would give me a star if grown-ups had a chart. I said grown-ups get different signs. She asked what kind. I said a clean table without being told. A door closed softly instead of slammed. A call made with a calm voice. She nodded like the list was a recipe she would keep. Elena passed the doorway and said I make life heavy when it could be light. She said I should go out and show a smile to the world that thinks I am made of rules. I said, steady is kind. She told someone on her phone that I am proud of being boring. The kettle sang, then stopped on time. I poured tea and watched the steam end when it should. After Ira slept, I put on headphones and made one more short call. I confirmed a time, a place, and a method. I asked for nothing extra. I ended the call and put the headphones away. The printer woke and slid out a single blank page from a test I had sent before. I held the page until it cooled. Blank is a plate that will hold truth when truth is ready to be served. I placed it in a plain folder and closed a drawer that did not lock. I saved 2 files. The cloud said file uploaded successfully again. A reminder ping tried to lift its head, and I dismissed it because bells do not make facts more true. I snapped the clean desktop tree shut. Archive A. Archive B. The screen went dark. The house let go of one small minute and then the next. From the landing, a step paused and then continued. The hallway held a little perfume and a memory of toner. I turned off the light. The mugs dried far apart like landmarks you can find in the dark. I stood by the wall planner and looked at the red circle. It waited without wanting anything. I went to bed and let the day end without a speech. The courthouse lobby felt like stone taught itself to breathe. Air moved without a smell. Shoes murmured. A security wand chimed now and then like a small bell that knows its place. A public plaza stretched beyond the glass with planters and a clock that does not argue about truth. I chose a spot by a column where I could see the elevators and the steps. I held nothing. I carried no speech. My phone stayed in my pocket. Minutes did the job they always do when no one tries to dress them as actors. The elevator opened and gave the lobby 3 faces I knew too well. Elena stepped first with a smile that expected to be reflected back. Lita followed with her phone up like a lantern that needed to find drama. Max came last with hands that moved like he was shaping a story from air. They crossed to the plaza where sunlight made the stone bright. Lita said something to Elena that invited a laugh. Elena gave the laugh to the air and waited for it to come back as approval. The air does not return, laughs on command out here. A neutral voice said Elena's full name. The voice belonged to a person whose job is to move facts from one hand to another with care. The person stood at a respectful distance. Not close, not far. The person confirmed one small detail and held out an envelope. Elena tried a half-smile that wanted to become a scene. The envelope changed hands. The person said a short sentence that carried weight. Divorce petition with temporary orders. The next sentence named the simple pieces on the first page. Who holds the home while the matter is pending, an interim schedule for Ira's days and pickups, a place and time to appear, and a number for questions. The sentences were built for understanding, not applause. Lita lifted her phone for an angle and then lowered it. Lenses love faces that can pretend. Paper does not pretend. Max shaped the air with both palms as if he could smooth the document the way he smooths a story. It did not change shape. Elena said something small to the neutral person. The person listened and repeated a polite line about notice and first steps. The lobby guard watched the clock, then watched nobody in particular, the way a professional lets rooms keep their dignity. My phone buzzed once. Anton's message said done. Another preview showed Raisa's name and 3 lines that wanted to be thunder. I did not open them. Petro sent nothing, which was different from before. Ira was not here. She was with Petro for after-school pickup, agreed yesterday, because plans are kindness you can prove. I let my hands remain where everyone could see them. I let the pillar hold part of my sight, so I did not have to hold everything at once. Elena looked at the envelope like it might become air if she focused her will. Lita tried to put the moment into a frame and found that frames do not shape stone. Max looked at me as if he wanted a human explosion for his lens. He did not get one. I did not speak to him. I did not speak to Elena. I raised my eyes long enough to meet hers once. The look said what a sentence would have repeated too many times. It said I kept my promise to handle this properly. It said the joke could not rename the line. Behind them, a man at the registration desk asked a visitor for a name and printed a sticker. The printer made a neat hum and delivered a rectangle that belonged to today. A woman at the coffee cart asked if a lid was needed. The answer was yes. The lid clicked on. Life continued because paper told it how to behave. That is what paper is for when used well, to keep rooms from becoming fires. The neutral person thanked Elena for her time and reminded her of the number to call for questions. There was no raised voice. There was no lecture. The building already knew its job. The envelope remained in the right hands. The moment had landed. It did not need applause to be true. It only needed to be finished. I stepped back from the column and toward the door. I nodded once at the neutral person. The nod said, "Thank you for doing your work with care." The person nodded back with the same quiet grammar. Lita lifted the phone again, but the center had shifted. The device could not invent a different outcome. Max arranged his mouth into a grin made for posters. It slid off the stone and fell into sunlight where no one picked it up. Outside, the plaza clock set a time that matched my watch. Matching times are a kindness, too. My phone buzzed again and stayed in my pocket. The door handled the weight of my hand without complaint. The glass held my reflection without asking for a caption. I walked into air that did not prefer anyone. The city kept moving. A bus turned at the corner right when it should. People crossed on a green light because that is how streets stay safe. Behind me, the lobby resumed its usual hum. The guard watched the next door. The printer waited for the next sticker. The coffee cart kept making small clouds that vanished on schedule. Paper sat where it needed to sit. Faces learned new shapes they had not rehearsed. The plaza did not hold the moment for anyone longer than necessary. It is not a theater. It is a place to pass through after facts are delivered. I did not look back. The bell in the elevator chimed once for another car. The sound was the size it needed to be. Not louder, not softer. The building breathed the same as it had before. My feet found the steps, and then the sidewalk. I thought of 2 mugs drying on opposite ends of a sink like landmarks for finding a road in the dark. I thought of a chart on a refrigerator that says, "Gentle voices. On-time pickup, clean table, beds are promises." I thought of a small hand that will learn the shape of safety by watching the clocks agree with actions. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.